All right, so as usual, I have an opening statement. I know you'll be surprised to hear that I pledge to work cooperatively with the governor and professionally and restate the number one problem facing the state of Illinois is the budget deficit. I don't think we can simply cut our way out of the deficit. I think that the governor's cuts-only budget devastates medical services for the elderly, for the disabled, and for struggling families. My view is that we need a balanced approach to eliminating the budget deficit, some cuts, some new revenue. I would point out that on the cuts, that we've passed a bill that would reduce the Medicaid spending by $400 million. The spending plan that we sent to the governor would have helped and protected middle-class families by supporting local schools, local police, and local road programs. The governor's advocacy of non-budget issues and the use of diversionary tactics runs against the core beliefs of Democrats and Republicans, because Democrats and Republicans do not want to reduce the wage level or the standard of living of middle-class families, or to force injured workers onto welfare or to the emergency room. I would repeat again that to the extent that the governor is advocating and attempting to advance these non-budget issues, that he's functioning in the extreme, that he's not functioning in moderation, he's not being reasonable, which is going to be needed to solve the problem of the budget deficit. Once again, let me state that we have attempted to meet the governor halfway. The House passed a workers' compensation bill that did changes in the workers' compensation program. The House has passed a bill pursuant to the governor's request, which would privatize the operations of the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And again today, we offered the Rauner Republicans in the House an opportunity to vote for a real estate tax freeze, and for the 11th time, they have declined to take advantage of that opportunity to vote for a bill that would freeze the extension on real estate taxes and send that bill to the Senate, where it could be considered by the senators. Questions?
What do you think of the Seventh Circuit decision today about the former governor?
What do you think of it?
I'm not the newsmaker.
From listening to you on WBBM radio, sometimes you are the newsmaker.
Well, it could be. But this time, in a turning of the tables, why don't I ask you what you think?
I haven't had a chance to read the opinion. I read the final paragraph. I'm not quite sure what it means. It seems to say that Mr. Blagojevich will remain as a guest of the United States government rather than coming back to Illinois. That's how it seems to read. Do you agree or do you not?
That part of it does seem uncertain though, perhaps his reputation. Can you get that back?
Well, that depends upon how he conducts himself.
What has his lasting legacy been on Illinois? Blagojevich and all that went on
Rod
there.
Blagojevich? I guess at a minimum it was interesting, right? At a minimum, it was interesting. Always something to think about and something to do. Yeah, at a minimum.
But are you still cleaning up some of the problems that he created? Is that some of what?
Well, he was greatly responsible for a lot of the overspending that happened while he was the governor. And that's one reason why the number one problem facing the state of Illinois today is the budget deficit. And everybody would be well advised to give all of their attention to eliminating the budget deficit. That cannot be done by functioning in the extreme, only by functioning in moderation.
What do you think of the governor saying today that you're the problem?
I would simply say that I agree with Governor Rauner that we better get to work on eliminating the budget deficit. And that's why I resist his effort to create diversions, like his advocacy of non-budget issues, because that takes us away from solving the number one problem of the state, which is the budget deficit.
He says that you want the pressure, you want social service agencies to be concerned as a way to eventually force enough support
Yeah.
for it.
He seems to forget that the legislature sent him a spending plan that would have helped and protected middle-class families. He was advised on more than one occasion that he could have worked with that spending plan using his powers under the Constitution, with the line item veto, the reduction veto, to fashion a spending plan that would have been good for the people of the state of Illinois, that would have helped and protected middle-class families. He chose not to do that. He chose to do an outright veto and put us all in the situation that we're in today.
Presuming a $4 billion deficit, can you say here today how much can be made up of that through cuts?
Not precisely. Now, if you go to the spending plan that we sent to the governor, there's numerous cuts in that plan. There's the $400 million savings in the Medicaid program, and there are savings all throughout the bills that we sent to the governor. So it is possible to sit and total the amount of money and to say to you, this is the amount of money that would have been cut from spending in the spending plan that we sent to the governor that would have helped and protected middle-class families, but the governor vetoed it.
But there'd still be $4 billion in that plan. There's still a shortfall of $4
There would be a shortfall, just as there was a shortfall in the budget that the governor filed, where he predicated $2 billion worth of spending on pension savings, never filing a pension bill until just a few weeks ago.
My question was, with it, you've said there are cuts there, I trust you. $4 billion remains, can there still be some more cuts, or?
Oh, I would be completely open to more cuts. And as I have said on numerous occasions, why I think we need a balanced approach to solving the problem of the budget deficit. Some cuts, some new revenue.
What would that look like? How much in cuts and how much in revenue do you think is realistic?
That's the type of situation that could be solved if people are functioning in moderation, not in the extreme, if everybody's reasonable, as they have been where there have been prior budget impasses under prior governors, including prior Republican governors. This is not new. This has happened before. There's been an impasse between a governor and a legislature, but people were reasonable. They didn't function in the extreme. They functioned in moderation, and they were able to get the job done and adopt a budget that would be good for the people of the state of Illinois, that would help and protect middle-class families, and provide that there'd be a well-functioning state government.
As the House holds another committee of the whole this summer, with 22 people being absent today, are these sessions like today effective in getting anywhere closer to the budget we're trying to fix?
Our purpose today was to have 4 of our committees meet. They all met, and they all were productive sessions of the committees. Our further purpose was to have the committee of the whole, which is underway right now, and we will offer an appropriations bill at the end of the committee of the whole that will provide appropriation for different activities of the state government. As I've told you on many occasions, the House is in continuous session. We're here, we're at work, we want to know what the problems of the state and the problems of the people are, and we're going to address them to the best of our ability.
Well, the governor has said that he's gonna shake up Springfield, that he's gonna be leading the state, that he has a mandate, and now all these months later, he said, oh gosh, if only it worked for Speaker Madigan. What happened?
I don't really know what happened. I know that there's evidence that he wants to create diversions, like his advocacy of the non-budget issues, items that would reduce wages and standard of living for middle-class families and force injured workers to welfare and to the emergency room. That appears to be a pattern. So rather than addressing the number one issue facing the state of Illinois, which is the budget deficit, he spends time creating diversionary issues. Doesn't help toward this final solution.
One of those diversions, in your mind, is the COLA. I asked you a week ago to explain why there's the COLA there, why the legislature is not taking action to either reject it. If you could explain to taxpayers, they're wondering, what is the deal here?
Yeah, no, two points. Number one, this is a diversion where the governor is attempting to divert attention away from the solution of the problem of the budget deficit. Number two, in the spending plan that we sent to the governor, we did not appropriate for the pay raise, for the COLA adjustment.
So how does that reconcile with the law? I mean, I feel like we're getting all sorts of stuff. the law and it's because of Pat Quinn, and yet if you didn't appropriate money, haven't we had court cases about that, for example, with AFSCME, even if you don't appropriate the money, it still has to go forward if there's a law there or a contract?
If you're filing a lawsuit in St. Clair County, apparently that's the ruling.
When we look
So
at,
it's not appropriate. You're telling me that there won't be,
No, what
because
what I'm saying is that in that spending plan that I've referenced on several occasions, I know you're very interested in that, I can see that in your eyes, we did not provide for the COLA adjustment for the legislature. It was not in there.
But because it was rejected, does that mean you'll get a COLA, or?
I don't have the answer to that question.
when we talk about compromise, we have, the governor saying, hey, if you look at these non-budget issues, then I'll look into essentially letting you pass a tax increase or something along those lines. Is he offering the wrong thing? Is he saying, hey, if you do what I want, I'll let you take the fall for a tax increase?
That's basically the governor's message, but let me reiterate what I've said on several occasions, that the governor's advocacy of his non-budget issues run up against the core beliefs of Democrats and Republicans that the government ought not to be in the business of reducing wages and the standard of living for middle-class families, nor should the government be in the business of forcing injured workers to welfare or to the emergency room. That's not what the government should be doing. This particular government should be about the business of solving the problem of the budget deficit. So whenever you hear or read commentary about the fiscal condition of the state of Illinois, the first comment is they're running on a budget deficit that's too high. That's the first comment. And that's what prompts me to say that the number one issue facing the state of Illinois is the budget deficit. We ought to get to work. We ought to function in moderation, not in the extreme, to solve that problem. And to the extent that we're spending time with non-budget issues while we're functioning in the extreme, we're not moving forward to solve the problem with the budget deficit.
What's
When was the
stopping-
last time there was a meeting between you and the governor, or the leaders and the governor?
I'm not quite certain when there was a meeting with the governor and the leaders. The governor and I met, it's 7, 8 days ago. And I spoke to that last week. It was a pleasant meeting. We both treated each other with courtesy. Anything else?
What's your response to him saying, him coming out today basically slamming you and saying, you rule with an iron fist, everything is your fault?
Right.
And then,
right.
then he says, oh, well, Cullerton and Emmanuel want to do things, but they're just scared of the speaker.
I would say that I'm going to continue my pledge to work cooperatively and professionally with the governor. When I speak about the governor, I'm basing those comments on facts. I'm not dealing in speculation. I'm not dealing in name-calling. I'm not going to go there. I'm simply going to say that I stand ready, as I have for several months, to work cooperatively and professionally with Governor Rauner. What we ought to do is to get about the business of working on the number one problem facing the state of Illinois, the budget deficit.
Even, what is,
Do these statements contradict the behavior that he's showing to you in your meetings with him? Because it seems like you say that productive meetings, and then we get a statement or a press conference where
Yeah.
he's personally attacking you.
Well, I would simply say that I find the meetings to be very courteous and at times productive. It does provide an opportunity for me and for Senator Cullerton to talk about the merits of some of these issues. As an example, it was in meetings like this that we advised the governor of his constitutional power under the line item veto and the reduction veto to fashion the budget to his desire. He chose not to use those powers given to him by the Constitution. Concerning his public comments outside of the meetings, I just find it regretful because I don't think it helps what we're trying to do. I would reiterate again, I'm not going to get into that type of conduct. I'm just not going to do it.
well, what's stopping you or anybody from introducing a balanced budget?
It certainly is possible, and any member of the General Assembly could do that.
I wonder why they haven't. You passed one, the Democrats did, that's $4 billion out of balance. The governor talked about one that was also out of balance.
Mhm.
No one's introduced one that is balanced, and I wonder why.
Well, I would simply say what I've said all along, that Illinois should have a spending plan that helps and protects middle-class families. The one we sent to the governor did that by supporting local schools, so there's not increased pressure on real estate taxes, local police, and local road programs. That's what the legislature and that's what the government ought to do. The legislature did that. Now, in terms of what the governor's view is, I would simply say that, again, the budget deficit comes first. To move out of that budget deficit, you need a balanced approach. Balanced approach. It just can't go one way and not the other. It's got to be balanced. Some cuts, some new revenue.
You
How would
said
you
you're,
categorize where we are today? It doesn't seem like we're any closer than we were at the end of May.
Yeah,
Where would you categorize us at today at day
Correct.
21?
The House is in continuous session. We are at work. We are working on the problems of the people and the problems of the government of the state of Illinois. We're making some progress. We'd like to make more progress. We'll continue to be at work and to be in continuous session.
you said you were willing to pass like an appropriations bill today in regards to the lively testimony you hear. We've seen a temporary July budget. You seen last week, are you willing to do these temporary appropriations for an extended period of time to get the state through? And also, do you think you have the support then to override the governor's veto, because he says he's not gonna play that game?
Well, let's talk about the essential services budget that the legislature passed to the governor. I think the governor ought to sign that bill. And then, having signed that bill, why we can go back to the question of budget, of appropriations. Ideally, why we would pass appropriation bills for a full 12 months. But as you know from being around the legislature, why you have to be flexible and you have to take things as they come and be ready to adjust.
Could you give us some examples of the progress that you're making? You just said we're making some progress.
Yeah, I think we're making progress because certainly the members of the legislature, you, and the people of Illinois are getting an opportunity to fully understand what is at issue in this budget standoff. And so I've spoken to this many times. We all know that the public in general is becoming very much aware of the governor's advocacy of these non-budget issues that go against the core beliefs of both Democrats and Republicans because they've reduced wages and the standard of living, and they force injured workers onto welfare and into the emergency room. That's the benefit that I see, that all across Illinois, Illinoisans are coming to realize what is at issue in this budget standoff.
You know, you talked about, the House keeps on doing this property tax vote time and time again. It keeps on having the same result. What is the point of that?
Remember that old expression, America is the land of opportunity? Remember that?
Yeah, I know it.
Okay. And so we're just abiding by that principle and providing opportunity to these Rauner Republicans in the House to fulfill their promise to freeze real estate taxes. Now, in life, sometimes people are a little slow to take advantage of opportunities, so we don't want to foreclose the opportunity. So we've given them 11 opportunities. That's a good number, and there could be more.
You could call Rauner's bill, or the Republican version, and it still wouldn't pass, and you wouldn't be at risk there, and they would have their day. They don't want to vote on John Bradley's bill.
Well, yeah, the number is growing exponentially.
But yeah, or, I don't know, can you comment? I mean, I feel like now, there's this collective bargaining and prevailing wage provision in the property tax bill. Rauner says that that's local control.
Yeah.
And then we also have the collective bargaining component in the pension legislation. Are you noticing a pattern there? I mean, is this union deal part of what you say is hurting middle-class families?
Absolutely. To the extent that you repeal or reset collective bargaining or the prevailing wage, you're lowering the wage rates, you're lowering the wages, you're lowering the standard of living for middle-class families. That's what you're doing. And that's part of what Rauner wants to advocate. That's what he's advocating. I don't support that. And the majority in the legislature doesn't support the government bringing down wages and the standard of living and forcing injured workers to welfare or to the emergency room.
Is it just because, I mean, what Rauner would say is Democrats are just allied with unions, and that's why you're sticking up for it? He's got obviously some big business friends that have helped out there. Is there a fundamental disagreement on policy and what is better for government and the economy, or is this a political issue?
Not every person who benefits from a high wage rate and a high standard of living is a member of a union. The presence of unions does raise the floor. That does happen. And they're able to do that because of collective bargaining and because of the prevailing wage. So to the extent that the majority of people in the legislature, especially the Democrats, don't want to lower wages in the standard of living, that's how you get connected to these proposals to change collective bargaining, change the prevailing wage.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.